Morning, everyone. We're going to move on today to multiplying fractions. It sounds a lot more scary than it actually is. Hopefully, you're all feeling fairly confident with adding and subtracting fractions. When it comes to multiplying, the trick to it is to imagine it in a story. So if you just see a number sentence of, I don't know, 1/2 times 2, put it into a story. Because once you start putting it into a story, into a real life situation, it suddenly becomes a little bit less scary. So 1/2 times 2. Well, if I had 2 cakes and I ate half of each cake, how much cake have I eaten? Well, you know, if you've eaten 2 halves of a cake, that's the same as 1 whole cake. So once you put it into a picture, into a story, it's going to be easier. Don't just stare at the page, at the number sentence, the fraction sentence, and start getting stressed out. It's not going to do you any good. So let's have a look at how we do this. So our question. I use this much art paper, says our orange dressed friend. So she's used one of the 4 possible quarters. So she's used 1/4. Our friend in the pink says that she's used 3 times as much. What's the number sentence here? Brilliant. It's 1/4 times 3, or 3 times 1/4. Does it matter which way around I write it? Does it matter if it's 1/4 times 3 or 3 times 1/4? It doesn't, because when we're doing multiplication, we know that multiplication is commutative. We can put it in either direction. It does not matter. Okay. So quite simply, we've got out 1/4. And there are going to be 3 times as many. 1 times 3. 1 times 3 is 3. So the answer is going to be 3/4. And actually, when we draw it out, we see that it's not as complicated as it first sounded. Now, our friend here says, what if she'd use 2/5 of the art paper instead of 1/4? What would the number sentence be there? 2/5 times 3. Well, it'd be exactly the same thing. We'd have our 2/5, but we'd have 3 of them. And then how many sets of 2/5 would we have? We'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'd have 6/5. Remember, the size of that square is a fifth. The mistake some people would make is say, oh, we've got 6/15. Because there are 15 squares there. But remember, each of these is 1 whole. So remember, as I said earlier, if you put this back into a real life situation, I ate 2/5 of a bar of chocolate. But I did that to 3 different bars of chocolate. How much chocolate did I eat? So I had 3 bars and I ate 2/5 of each bar. How much chocolate have I eaten? So for each of those bars, I've eaten 2/5. There's 2/5. There's 4/5. There's 6/5 of those 3 bars. And if you draw it out, we can draw it in different ways, but we know that 6/5 is an improper fraction. We know it's an improper fraction because 6 is greater than 5. So we can take away 5 to make 1 whole, and that leaves us with 1/5. So the answer to this in an improper fraction would be 6/5. Simplified down into a mixed fraction, it would be 1 1/5. And I know simplifying is something that a few of you have been finding tricky, and we're just going to keep practicing. So don't worry if you get the improper answer, but are still struggling with simplifying. Just keep plugging away and working out where you're going wrong when you simplify. It's something that with practice, you will get better at. Let's try a different example. So here we've got 2/7. Find the value of 5 times 2/7. Well, if I had 5 holes and shaded in 2/7 of each of those, how many sevenths have I shaded in? It's going to be 5 times 2. 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 4, 2, 5 2. 5 times 2 is 10. So I have 10 sevenths. It's still sevenths, remember, because each of these holes represents 7 possible cubes of chocolate, of which I've eaten 2. So I've got 10 sevenths. 10 sevenths is an improper fraction. So I'm going to take 7 away from 10 to get 1 whole. And that leaves me with 3 sevenths. So I know the answer is 1 whole and 3 sevenths. If at this point you're thinking, what is he talking about? Pause the video, go back to the beginning and watch it again. I'm going to try and speed up a little bit and not to keep repeating the examples. So it is up to you, if you need things repeated, to rewind. If you've watched a section a couple of times and it's not making sense, then can you send me a message and then I can try and explain it in a different way? Okay, let's look at this one here. 5 times 2/3. Pause the video. What do you think 5 times 2/3 would equal? Right, so we know that we've got 5 lots of something split into thirds, of which we have 2 of those thirds. So we're doing 5 times 2. We know 5 times 2 is 10, so we have 10 thirds. Now I've got to see with my 10, how many holes can I make? Well, I know I can take away 3 to get 1 whole. 10 take away 3 leaves me with 7. I know I can take away another 3 to leave me with another whole. That's going to leave me with 4, because 7 take away 3 is 4. I can take another 3 away to get another whole, and that's going to leave me with 1, because 4 take away 3 is 1. So I know the answer is 3 holes and 1/3. Oh, you're not supposed to be able to see that bit yet. It's all going wrong. There we go. Right. Can you have a try at these questions? So pause the video now and have a try at these questions. I really hope everyone is having a try at these questions. I've heard that some of you are just watching and not actually trying. If you're not trying these questions, you're not going to know if you're struggling. You won't know to rewind. So it's really important that you have a go. Okay, so we're looking at 5 times 1. This is a nice simple one. 5 times 1 is 5. So my answer is just going to be 5/8. 5/8 is a proper fraction. So I'm not going to convert it. Can I simplify 5/8? Not really. Let's look at B. 2 times 2. You notice what I'm doing here? I'm just multiplying this number by my numerator. 2 times 2 is 4. So my answer is 4/9. 4/9. I'm not going to simplify that. I've got an odd number and an even number. Question C. 3 times 2 is 6. So my answer is 6/9. Again, this is still a proper fraction, 6/9. This time, 6 is in the 3 times table and 9 is in the 3 times table. So I know that I could divide 6 by 3 to get 2. I could divide 9 by 3 to get 3. So I could change this to 2/3. I could simplify it to 2/3. 5 times 5, that's 25. So my answer here is 25/6. 25/6, I've got to simplify it down. And I'm going to do that by using, let's have a think, what could I do? 25 and 6, odd numbers, so I'm not going to use necessarily halving. 25 is in the 5 times table, 6 isn't. So before I get myself in a pickle, let's put it into a mixed fraction, because that might make life simpler. Well, I know that 4 6s are 24, and I've got 25/6. So I'm going to take away 4 lots of 6 to make 4 wholes, and that's going to leave me with 1/6. So my answer is 4 and 1/6. When I think about simplifying, I realize I don't need to simplify anything more, because by putting it into a mixed fraction is now the simplest it could be. Question E, 2 times 5 is 10. So I've got 10/6. That's an improper fraction again. Pardon me. So I'm going to remove 6 from my 10 to make 1 whole. So it's now 1 whole and 4/6. I can simplify that by halving, and I can go down to 2/3. 1 whole and 2/3. 8 times 3. So we've got to think about our 8 times table. So we've got, all my brains on dead, 24 fourths. And then I'm going to simplify that down. 24 fourths is, of course, an improper fraction. So I'm looking at dividing by 4, getting some of my fourths into whole numbers. So just to recap, your answers should look like that. If, as I said, you have got your answers as an improper fraction because you haven't necessarily changed it into mixed, don't get worried. I really want you to get the hang of converting and simplifying. However, the lesson here is about multiplying, so it's not the end of the world in this lesson, but you do need to remember you've got to go back and rewatch perhaps the recap lesson on, which I think was Friday, on simplifying. Okay, can you now complete worksheet 15 for me? It's not in your workbooks yet, but it is on the daily PDF. I'm going to change slightly what we do, and I'm going to give you the answers in tomorrow's lesson, because I think some of you are struggling with your impulses and are looking at the answers before you've done the sheet. Shocking. So just to make sure there's no temptation, the answers will be in next lesson. All right, I'll see you tomorrow, everyone.